Welcome to The Gut Show. I'm your host, Erin Judge, registered dietitian and founder of Gutivate. I'm also your fellow IBS warrior. Our goal on this side of the internet is to empower those with IBS and digestive disorders to understand their gut better, to have a healthier relationship with their bodies, and to make confident choices to improve their digestive health. During this season, you can expect a conversation around a hot topic related to gut health, digestion, and IBS. As a disclaimer, I am a dietitian, but I am not your dietitian. So everything covered in this episode is meant to be educational and is purely information that you can take back to your healthcare team in order to make the best decisions for you. If you're new here and something just doesn't feel right in your gut, if your symptoms have led you to this podcast, I invite you to start by taking the quiz, What's Your Poop Personality? Your personality type will unveil what your symptoms may mean, what may be causing them, and what you can do about them. This is a free quiz and you can take it today at gutivate.com or find the direct link below in the show notes. While you're going to take the quiz, let's jump into today's episode. Now for a quick word from our sponsors with resources that might support you. Did you know that you can now order your own gut health test without waiting months for a doctor's appointment? Gemelli Biotech offers trusted, science-backed, at-home tests for conditions like SIBO, EMO, ISO, and post-infectious IBS. Their Trio Smart Breath test measures the 3 key gases, hydrogen, methane, and hydrogen sulfide, to detect different forms of microbial overgrowth. As for those with IBS symptoms, IBS Smart is a simple blood test that can confirm post-infectious IBS with clinical accuracy. Validated by the leaders in gut health, these are tests that you can trust and tests that you can take comfortably from your home. So go to getgutanswers.com to find out which tests are right for you and use the code ErinJudge25, all one word, ErinJudge25, to save $25 on your order. Is a gluten-free diet just not cutting it, or maybe not even necessary when it comes to chronic symptoms like bloating, gas, and pain? Research actually shows that in those without celiac disease, it's actually the FODMAP, the carbohydrate fructan in wheat, not gluten, that causes symptoms most often. This means that you may not need a strict gluten-free diet to see symptom relief. And it means that if you are reacting to fructans, there may be more foods in your diet beyond wheat that are causing you symptoms. This includes foods like garlic and onion, and even some fruits and vegetables that can sneak their way into your diet and contribute to those chronic symptoms. You can choose to limit these foods and reduce your overall fructan intake in order to avoid symptoms. You also have the option to break the fructan down using FODZYME, an enzyme blend that targets fructan, lactose, and GOS FODMAPs, and that will help you break these FODMAPs down to then prevent the symptoms. Learn more about FODZYME in the show notes, and you can use the code THEGUTSHOW for 20% off your first order. And now let's get back to the show. Welcome back to The Gut Show. I'm excited for a little solo episode today to talk a little bit about some surprising IBS triggers. Now, I talk about this a lot on social media, and I wanted a longer episode around some of these because this is a hot topic with clients that a lot of times we attribute our IBS symptoms, gut issues, whatever it may be, to food or to things that may seem so obvious. But whenever we're thinking about managing IBS and preventing flares, it's important to understand what all is filling what I call your trigger bucket. So if you think of your bucket, everyone's bucket is a different size. That's your capacity, right? And that can depend on the condition that you have. It can depend on your history, various conditions, whatever's going on. But whenever triggers overfill your bucket, that's when you have a flare. It's rarely going to be one single trigger that overflows. Sometimes it can be, but often it's going to be a combination of things coming in and then that overflow that causes a problem. So when you're thinking about preventing a flare, and answers that question of why are you able to tolerate something one day, but then you can't the next day? You have to understand what all triggers are filling your bucket, and then understand day by day where you're at with your bucket, how filled it is, what your capacity looks like for other triggers to come in. And then that will help you then decide, okay, what changes do I make to then prevent the flare? So today we're going to talk about some of these triggers, not all of them. So we're kind of hitting on the more surprising ones, but some of the things that you might not be thinking about that you can consider as part of this bucket for yourself. So the first one, we talk about stressors a lot.
right? And how stress is a trigger in and of itself. And often we think about what we perceive as quote unquote negative stress, which can include things like a heavy work day, a lot of things on your plate, whatever it may be, right? Being stressed in a negative way. But positive stress can also be a trigger for some. And one of those things is exercise. Exercise is a stressor. It's meant to put your body in a state of stress to then build resilience, build strength, whatever you need to do through that exercise, what you're working towards. And so that is one that can be quite surprising, that adding that stressor in, if again, your bucket's already overflowing or overfilled, that may cause more symptoms. And so figuring out how to decrease the stress added from the exercise and kind of know your limits there can be a big deal. Happiness and excitement can also be positive stressors. This is something that you see people maybe joke about online. You've probably experienced this, where it's like, if I'm excited about something, like a date or an interview or something that's coming up, sometimes that excitement itself can lead to more symptoms. And that is because it does create that same stress response in the body. It makes things more active. It turns on like that gut brain connection, right? There's a lot involved there. And so that can be a positive stressor that may impact you. Another one that I talk about a lot, so I don't find it that surprising, but still so many people are unaware of this one, and that is poor quality sleep. And I'm not just talking about you're not sleeping at all, like, oh, I had to stay up all night, or I only got 3 hours of sleep, or whatever it may be. It may also include your quality. So waking up frequently at night, not getting deep sleep, something that could be impacting the quality of your sleep, like alcohol intake or too much sugar, like stimulating caffeine late in the day, exercising before bed, all of that can impact the quality of your sleep. Your mental health can also play a role here. So if you are more anxious, there's more stress going on, even changes in the menstrual cycle can impact sleep quality and those layers of sleep that you should be getting. And so that can play a role and work against you. Another one is the shifts in hormones. So, like I mentioned, those specifically with menstrual cycles, but this can also be true with life stage. So, whenever you are menstruating, and we talk about females a lot, but men, like your hormones shift too as you age and things happen, right? And so that those shifts in hormones can play a role. Perimenopause, menopause, all of that can make a difference and play a role, and that's something to watch out for. For those who are menstruating throughout the menstrual cycle, hormones are shifting, and this happens a few times per month. And so it can seem like you're always on this shift in hormones. And if you also have like PCOS, if you have endometriosis, like if there's another condition that is hormone driven, or hormones might be like the shift in hormones might cause more symptoms, then this might be more significant for you, but can definitely be one to consider. Now, menstruation is one that's easy to identify because there's bleeding involved, right? It's a little bit more obvious. And I think PMS, pre-menstruation, tends to get a lot of attention in terms of bloating and discomfort and mood changes. So you may be aware of your hormone shifting there, but around ovulation, you may not be as aware of that. Or again, life stage changes like perimenopause. That can be a big one that's not super well defined, which can lead you to feel kind of confused and like lost a bit in what's going on in your body that was different maybe than where you were before that shift started. Another one is eating too quickly. I talk about chewing a lot, and chewing is a part of this. The gastrocolic reflex is also a part of this. So when we're talking about chewing or eating too quickly, eating really fast, what is happening often is if you're going fast with your eating, you're most likely not chewing enough. And we have full episodes on chewing. You can search that on our site for sure if you want to like dig way into it. But chewing is one of the first major parts of digestion. You're breaking down many carbs through the enzymes that are in your saliva as you're mixing up food. You're also kind of mechanically, physically breaking down some of those fibers in different foods. Those are a lot of your common gut triggers. And so processing them through your mouth and through your chewing is a really big deal. It can make a difference downstream with the symptoms that you experience. So it can be a big deal and something that can be a game changer for many people. So if you're eating too fast, you may not be chewing enough, and that's really important. If you're eating too fast, you may also be filling your stomach really quickly and not allowing food to move through and creating more of like a stretching, filling effect. Now, if you have constipation, sometimes that's warranted and helpful because when you have that stretching, there's a communication sent to your rectum where you're storing all your poop to empty things out because more food is coming along the way. That's called the gastrocolic reflex. If you deal with urgency and diarrhea and pain or cramping with bowel movements, eating too quickly and overfilling the stomach too fast, that may cause that reflex, which may lead to more of your symptoms and feel more significant or severe for you, and something to watch out for. What also can happen is if you're eating too quickly, you may not notice that you are full in time and you may eat past fullness. When you eat past fullness, that's going to create more pressure in your abdomen. That may lead to the feelings of bloating and discomfort, maybe pain for some people. Also can contribute to upper GI symptoms where that pressure is pushing up, causing more reflux, heartburn, GERD type symptoms. All of that can happen. So eating too quickly can be problematic. On the flip side, another surprising trigger is eating too slowly or grazing, meaning you're not eating confined meals, but you're just kind of eating throughout the day. You're snacking, right? If you eat too slowly or you're grazing, kind of in both scenarios, you are spreading the time you're eating out over a long period without many breaks or time in between. Now, when you are not eating, that time between meals, your body has a few processes throughout your gut where it's processing what you ate, right? We're moving things along, we're digesting, absorbing nutrients, kind of moving your food along throughout the pipe. In the small intestine, food should be through, like it comes into your stomach. Usually it's about 30 minutes to an hour to get into your small intestine, just depending on what's going on there. And then another like 3-ish hours, it may hit your large intestine. So there's a few hours after you're done eating that food is kind of processing in your small intestine and making its way to your colon where it stays the longest amount of time, where we have fermenting of the fiber, we're forming poop, all that stuff is happening. In the small intestine, when you are not eating, so only when you're fasted, no food coming in, after a period of time, thought to be around 90-ish minutes, we have these sweeping waves where your small intestine kind of sweeps itself out, pushes things along, and then ideally with a couple of those waves, all the food that you ate in your previous meal have moved on to your large intestine. And this is thought to help improve overall healthy gut motility, prevent things like trapped gas and excess bloat, and also possibly prevent and help with small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or SIBO. And preventing that also part of the treatment plan and trying to prevent relapse, all of that, symptoms related to that. So if you are not giving yourself time, and the kind of rule of thumb is around 3 hours, ideally, this is going to look different between each meal or snack. It's not a perfect rule, but get a couple of those waves in, that's going to make a difference. So if you're not doing that because you're just grazing all day, you're missing out on those waves and you may have more symptoms. What can also happen if you're just grazing all day is that your gut is constantly working, and that can lead to a lot of gas and bloat and more discomfort, all of those different symptoms. So for some people, eating smaller meals more frequently is the answer. For other people, eating smaller meals more frequently is not the answer. Actually, eating bigger meals and spacing them out is the answer. So knowing like what patterns you have at place and then what you can do about it can help. Something else that I notice for people who are kind of grazers is they don't have a lot of routine and consistency of their routines overall, but especially with meals. And consistency of routines with meals, when you eat, when you poop, all of that can make a difference in how your gut functions. And when you have a condition like IBS or something where your gut is already not functioning well, those routines can be so incredibly vital to you feeling good and doing well. So that can be something that's often missed as a strategy that can be supportive for people who just don't have those routines present at all. Another possibly hidden surprising trigger, not as surprising as processed foods. And I'm not just talking about, I think this is getting a lot of attention currently with some things that are going on culturally and politically and all that stuff. I'm not just talking about food dyes or, gluten or certain preservatives. I'm just talking about the processing of foods to make them into certain shapes, make them shelf stable, make them palatable. There's very little research on these added stabilizers, preservatives, things like that. For some people, you're going to react to those. Others, you may not. Again, we don't have a lot of good data. We need it studied more. And ideally, less is better, right? Because we don't know necessarily how we are impacted by these things. So eating primarily whole foods is ideal, and including those foods for convenience or joy or whatever in moderation is preferred by many and likely a good approach, right? Based on what we currently know. There's no hard rule. Very few people have to have a black and white. You can never have those ingredients ever. There is some safety to it, but for certain conditions, how it impacts the gut microbiome, those are questions that haven't been fully answered yet. So moderation is key. But processing of foods, for some people, can be a trigger in and of itself. And a big one that we look at are things like pastas and even certain breads and different ways of processing those, as well as things like cereals and granolas and food like that, bars, right? Even protein powders. These are all processed foods. For some people, the things that are kind of reshaped, reformed, like pastas, granolas, cereals, can be harder to break down. They're not meant to be easily broken down. They're meant to be preserved and stable, right? And so for many people, that's no big deal. They tolerate them fine and they can absorb them, whatever, digest them just fine. For others, there may be problems digesting and absorbing those foods. And especially those who have slow motility and like constipation, there may be more bloating or discomfort from those foods simply because of the processing. This is something I've more so seen in practice, and it kind of makes sense logically. We just don't have like, it's not like FODMAPs where we're like, oh, it's one ingredient and this specific thing, and this is what the body's doing with it. We don't really have that. It's just more what we see in practice. So for some people, it can be problematic. For other people, certain processing methods can actually make things better. And you can digest the food better when the fiber is broken down a little bit differently, or it's removed, or whatever may be at play. So everyone is a bit different with this one, but I do think it is something that can often be missed, like potato chips compared to like potatoes. That's another example. Some people, the fats added, might be a problem, or again, not the fiber added, or just not being in the same form. There is a question and a theory, especially in the FODMAP world. There's a lot of research that's comparing like a low FODMAP diet to like a Mediterranean diet, which is more whole foods based, and showing similar results for IBS, which doesn't always make sense because a Mediterranean diet has FODMAPs present. And so how can you have the same result from two very different approaches, right? And one of the theories is that even FODMAPs might actually be better tolerated in whole foods versus processed or combined with other foods. And it might be the combination of all the food products and other fibers and other components to the food that we're eating that makes a difference in how we feel from that food. And so that can help explain, we don't have a lot of answers for it yet, but some people will say that when they eat more processed foods, they don't feel as good as when they eat whole foods. And that could be part of it. So there's a lot more to that one that is still to be determined, I guess, or explained, but it can be true for some people. And I will keep the disclaimer that doesn't mean you can never eat any processed foods. Sometimes processed foods can make a big difference and they're there for convenience, but it's also something that we might look at if you're just surviving on like, well, I'm eating a low FODMAP cereal and then I'm having, pasta, and like you're having these foods that are kind of repackaged, or a low FODMAP protein bar, and then that's not being tolerated super well. It might not be the FODMAPs. It could also just be the processing, and trying more whole foods and kind of changing that up a bit might actually be an approach that works better for you. Now for a quick word from our sponsors with resources that might support you. Are you struggling with bloating, constipation, or diarrhea, and you're still waiting to see your doctor? Take control and get answers with Gemelli Biotech's at-home gut health tests. The Trio Smart Breath Test is the only at-home test that is validated to look for all three gases that are associated with microbial overgrowth: hydrogen, methane, and hydrogen sulfide. That means it can detect SIBO, EMO, and ISO in one simple test. It ships right to your door, no appointment needed. You take it and you send it back, then you get answers. If your IBS symptoms started after a stomach bug or food poisoning, it could be post-infectious IBS. The IBS Smart Blood Test is a quick at-home test to help identify it. Fun fact, 1 in 9 people who get food poisoning will end up with post-infectious IBS, and most don't even know they have it.
With both of Gemelli Biotech's tests,
you'll get clinically backed results in about a week, and you can take them straight to your provider. No waiting, no referrals, just answers. Find out which tests are right for you at getgutanswers.com and use the code AaronJudge25, all one word, AaronJudge25, to save $25 on your order. You can also find all these details in your show notes. As someone with IBS-C, I've struggled with symptoms related to food for the majority of my life, specifically FODMAPs. My personal triggers, beans, dairy products, garlic, and onion, would leave me feeling bloated and uncomfortable after meals, especially whenever I was eating out or traveling or living my life outside of my home, which meant I either had to just deal with the symptoms or eat bland, awful food and miss out on experiencing the social interactions and the joy of food. Finding FODZYME was a game changer for me. This is an enzyme blend that targets FODMAPs, specifically the GOS that's found in beans, fructan in the garlic, onion, wheat, and even different fruits and vegetables, as well as lactose in dairy products. I stash this in my wallet, my husband's wallet, every bag I own. I take it with me everywhere I go so that I can simply sprinkle it on my meals, eat with confidence, and feel my best after. If you want to try FODZYME for yourself, go to FODZYME.com and don't forget to use the code THEGUTSHOW, all one word, THEGUTSHOW, for 20% off your first order.
When it comes to irritable bowel syndrome with constipation, or IBS-C, there's no one-size-fits-all treatment. If you're not satisfied with your current IBS-C medication, it may be time to try something different. Ibsrela, tenapanor, is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with IBS-C. Ibsrela works differently to help relieve the constipation and abdominal symptoms of IBS-C and could be the right option for you. Ready to try something different for your IBS-C symptoms? Ask your doctor about Ibsrela. Do not give Ibsrela to children less than 6 years of age. You should not give Ibsrela to children 6 to less than 18 years. It may harm them. The most common side effect is diarrhea, sometimes severe, and your child could get severe dehydration. Stop taking Ibsrela and call your doctor if you develop severe diarrhea. Do not take Ibsrela if you have a bowel blockage. Tell your doctor if you are pregnant or breastfeeding and about the medicines you take. Other common side effects include swelling or a feeling of fullness or pressure in your abdomen, gas, or dizziness. Learn more at ibsrela.com/PI or call 1-844-IBSRELA and press option 4.
And now let's get back to the show. Another one is carbonation. I talk about this one pretty often. I feel like it gets a lot of good attention these days, but with the rise of gut health sodas and things like that, I think this is a lot trickier. So carbonation is gas added to liquid, usually water, and then like a syrup or something is added for flavor, right? That's how like sodas are made. But carbonated waters are also really hot and have been for a while. Carbonated juices and things like what we're seeing again with these kind of like gut health sodas and healthier sodas and all that stuff. You're adding gas in. When you drink that gas, for some people, it feels good and they don't notice anything. But for those who have gut conditions like IBS, or we have this hypersensitivity in the gut, you may notice more symptoms and discomfort with that gas filling in your stomach and expanding, right? That's going to create that stretching effect. Gas fills more space than like just liquid would, right? And so you may notice more symptoms that could be heartburn, upper GI symptoms. It might be bloating that you notice. Rarely is it going to be diarrhea or constipation. That would probably be attributed more to the other ingredients added to that thing that you're drinking. But the carbonation itself can cause you to feel kind of bloated, gassy, things like that, burpy, upper pressure, things like that. So something to pay attention to. Again, I see a lot of times in practice clients who are drinking things like the Poppy and those types of sodas, and they love them, but they're causing more problems, and because they're drinking them so frequently, or like Diet Coke more frequently, or things like that. So decreasing the intake, spreading it out, having a little bit at a time, like knowing how you feel with it can make a big difference. Another kind of on that same line of like those gut health sodas, added fibers to quote unquote healthy foods. And this comes into play with FODMAPs. A lot of times these gut health or healthy fiber rich foods, fiber one bars, high fiber breads, whatever it may be. A lot of times what's added in to these processed products are high FODMAP, high fructan, prebiotic fibers. So they're good fibers, but they are highly fermentable, very much gas causing, and can cause a lot of symptoms for people who are sensitive, already have a gut condition, again, have hypersensitivity. And some of these include things like inulin, chicory. Those are some of the big ones. But those high fructan, you may see even FOS, FOS, fructooligosaccharides that might be added in. Again, these are prebiotic. They're feeding good gut bacteria, and that's why they're used. Inulin is also a little bit more affordable to add and use, but it's not tolerated very well by very many people. And often these products are using a large amount. I think like some of these sodas that are on the market are using 5 to 8 grams, which is significant. Like a Fiber One bar, I think is probably similar, maybe even upwards of like 10 grams. They can get really high really fast, so be mindful. You also see this sometimes in those like, I think the carb balance tortillas that exist out there, which a lot of people will use to like decrease carb intake with weight loss goals or things like that. Sometimes those low calorie products that are supposed to be satiating, filling may have some of these ingredients added. So you do want to be careful because they can sneak up on you if you're not sure what you're looking for and cause a lot of symptoms when you think you're doing something right. So you may not be suspecting the thing that you're adding for health with the symptoms that you're experiencing. Another kind of sneaky trigger that is sort of also aligned, I guess, with the whole underlying cause conversation to symptoms is scar tissue or adhesions. We see this a lot in those with endometriosis because the endometriosis lesions, they can create adhesions. Adhesions are these, it's kind of like hardened, tightened tissue that can grow on organs, but also bring organs together. So adhesion, I guess, put them together. And so you see this with like endometriosis lesions that have progressed and they're maybe on the ovaries or on the fallopian tubes or somewhere else, but then they adhere to the bowels and create that adhesion. And whenever you have, they can do it to the bladder, all the abdomen muscle, all these different places. But adhesions can cause restriction of movement of muscle, so which can lead to pain, but also slow gut motility, issues with like bowel movements, pelvic floor issues, so many different issues. Scar tissue is very similar. So scar tissue, if you've ever had a scar, you can tell it kind of creates, again, that restriction of what it is on, which is often muscle or skin, something like that inside the body that usually looks like that smooth muscle of the GI tract or other organs, which can cause problems with their function and also more pain, more discomfort, all of that because of the thing it's doing to the organ, right, or to those muscles. And nerves are involved. There's a lot happening there. So with endometriosis, with the lesions themselves, that can happen. It can happen with post-surgery. So endometriosis surgery, we also see that post-hysterectomy, post-C-section, maybe in some cases. If you've ever had like abdominal trauma or any other abdominal surgery, getting gallbladder removed, like anything that is surgical, because there's cutting, there's some healing that has to occur, and sometimes scar tissue can develop instead of good healing. And I will say in practice, I don't see very many people getting these surgeries and being properly evaluated for scar tissue and helping reduce scar tissue in their post-surgical plan with like physical therapy or other methods. And so a lot of people might be at risk for this, and it can be completely missed because it's not something you're routinely checking for. It's also tricky to remove. So PT can be helpful, physical therapy. Maybe a role for something like an acupuncture or something like that, depending on the person. But a lot of times, sometimes surgically, you have to go in there and remove it and clean everything up. But then you're adding another surgery, which can increase your risk for scar tissue adhesions again, which can just kind of fuel a vicious cycle and be really frustrating to deal with. So that one is very sneaky, and those other pieces that cause scar tissue adhesions also can trigger symptoms and be a cause of the symptoms and the problem to begin with. And so again, it can get really complex and really messy really fast, but something that we definitely want to watch out for. And I'm always looking for in patients. Another thing is pelvic floor dysfunction. And not just full dysfunction, because pelvic floor dysfunction may be masked as IBS or overlap, especially with constipation, but also incontinence, pain, things like that. But even more acute pelvic floor dysfunction and pelvic floor issues like tightness, weakness, injury, things like that can contribute to symptoms. Your pelvic floor, and we have episodes on this as well, but your pelvic floor muscles control the function of all the things that empty out of you are open, and then they control those openings and how they work, right? And so they're going to help prevent things like prolapse, where organs kind of fall through the openings. But they're also going to be involved in how you poop, how you're able to empty. They can be involved in how your abdomen is rebounding against the stretching of your intestines while you're digesting food, which relates to bloating. Your pelvic floor also is connected to like your core and your back muscles, and can be related to pain. Because if there's tension, there's tightness, and one muscle's pulling on another, that can create pain that may feel like abdominal pain related to what you ate or other things. And so there can be a lot of relationship between what's happening in the pelvic floor chronically, yes, but also even acutely, which I feel like is not talked about enough or is often missed, especially in males. Because in females, we talk about the pelvic floor more, especially if you've gone through a pregnancy or delivery, or dealt with vaginal prolapse or pain with intercourse and things like that. Those are all red flags for pelvic floor dysfunction, by the way. So something to think about, or like peeing when you jump up and down, like not normal. But men often don't get this talked about, but men have pelvic floor as well. And so there can be some connections there. Something that really isn't talked about enough with pelvic floor dysfunction, and acutely and chronically, would be trauma to the area. So whether that be due to abuse, again, just trauma, injury in some other way. And then if you have that tension, anytime you're kind of exacerbating that, so let's say you have dealt with constipation, or you have diarrhea now, or there's, with intercourse or other things, that kind of repeat injury without proper therapy and rehabilitation of those muscles may progress and worsen the problem, which then can create more issues and change your symptoms even, or make them worse, or make them more frequent, all of those different things. So all very important. Even just having constipation can cause pelvic floor issues. So it's definitely something that you would want to talk about with your provider and be evaluated for, possibly meet with the pelvic floor physical therapist to get a full evaluation and get care, so that that is not working against you. Quality movement. So people who sit all day, like not necessarily the best for our pelvic floor, our core, abdomen, all of our muscles. And so exercise, strengthening those muscles, releasing them, deep belly breathing, not holding a lot of tension in the abdomen, not keeping your legs crossed all day. Like those are also some habits that can be really supportive for your pelvic floor, or again, working against you and sneaking up on you, because you may not be thinking about that at the forefront when you are experiencing symptoms throughout the day. So those are the big tricky ones that I wanted to discuss and bring up, just because those are some things I see in practice a lot, and I don't see talked about enough. I feel like we talk about a lot of the food stuff pretty often. We talk about some of the lifestyle behaviors fairly often, but we may not talk about these pieces. And these are not things that your doctor might be asking you about right away to be able to help you understand. But when it comes to triggers, I would say, again, think about that bucket. If there's a lot filling your bucket, you never know what's going to take you over the edge. And it's not always going to be food or your stress or your lack of movement or whatever it may be. There's so many things that can go into it. And so the more that you can learn and develop that intuition, true intuition is knowing what all is going on in your environment and with your body. What is your body needing to process? And then how does that determine what your body needs in that day? What can you do to be supportive? What cautions do you take? That kind of intuition is what kind of sets you apart as being someone who is fully confident and fully in control of their condition and of the symptoms that they may experience, versus someone who is highly reactive or not in control at all, or being caught off guard often, not sure what is going on. And we want to be in that place of confidence, security, that stage, because then you're able to kind of modify and adjust what you need day by day. You're able to navigate travel and all these other things. Another one I didn't mention is Time zones and jet lag can be a huge trigger. Being in the air with an airplane that expands gas, that can be a big trigger. There's a lot of potential things. And so the more you learn, the more you understand, you kind of tuck away in your brain, you develop a bit of an intuition for, the more resilient you can be in many different environments with your condition that you are living with. And that might be temporary, right, while you're solving the problems of the condition. But regardless, or if it's temporary or chronic or long term, that is the key to management. That's the realistic side of it and the practical side of it. That's what we teach one-on-one. So if you're looking for some support in that, this is something I love to do. I definitely can help. We always keep that in the show notes if you're interested in working with myself as your dietitian and your coach. I also do talk about a lot of these things and cover a lot of this in the membership program, the Master Method membership. So if you're interested in that, you can find that information as well, because I would love to be a guide there, even virtually, and help you with those different pieces, because you deserve to develop that type of intuition and confidence. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, for one, wherever you're listening, that helps, but also leave us a review, rate us. That makes a difference in who can find these episodes. We've got a lot of fun ones coming the rest of the season. I've got some fun topics that I've been pulling out, things that I get asked about often, things that are searched often, some trends that are going through social media. We're going to talk about a lot of those, a couple of fun interviews, even more coming your way than we've already done this season. So definitely share the love with others. And then if you want to share a surprising trigger that I didn't cover, you're like, I wish you would have talked about this, share it with us. You can find me on social media, put on a story, tag me, or message me, comment on the post that has this episode on it. That can be a great way to start that conversation and chime in, so that this is more of a conversation than just you listening to me. I would love to hear your perspective, your thoughts on that, or if you learned something new, whatever it may be, please share and share the episode along the way. So thank you again for tuning in, and I will see you on our next episode.
Are you listening to today's episode with the main thought being, what are the steps that I can take to get rid of my symptoms right now? While I hope that the information that we share in every episode of The Gut Show leaves you feeling more empowered and more confident in your body, it's not always going to solve your problem or give you a clear direction for your specific symptoms and your needs. The Master Method membership is an online program for the person with chronic digestive symptoms and IBS who wants step-by-step guidance to understand their body, address the drivers of IBS, reduce symptoms, and build resilience in your gut long-term. This membership includes a step-by-step course and a dietitian-led community that teaches you how to holistically address each symptom and the IBS drivers, how to reduce symptoms more strategically and with confidence, and guidelines for better gut health long-term, so that you're not only thinking about today, but you're also improving your outcomes in the future. It is time to ditch the symptoms and get your life back. The membership is your first step. You can learn more and enroll at ibsmastermethod.com and use the code GUTSHOW, 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 for $25 off your enrollment fee.